Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to True Crime Files. I'm Kathy, your host today, and I've got a couple videos to share with you. We have all heard all over the internet about Brian Hooker and his wife Lynette missing at sea. There is so many red flags, and like I've said in past videos that I've covered, all mostly with Ashley, is that there's more holes in his story than there is in a calendar, in a sieve. You know, it's just ridiculous. As I always say, to be a good liar, you need to have a good memory. And Brian does not have a good memory. I've got a couple pointers of my own that I've sort of think doesn't quite add up, and I'm sure other people are thinking the same thing. So the first video is with Ashley. The second one is with Matt Johnson, with a private investigator called TJ Ward. Now, he does voice analysis and he's listened to Brian's calls through this device, which only him and a few other people in the private investigation time sort of thing have got permission to use this app or program to analyze the voices. To me, it's better than a lie detector. But what's most important is TJ Ward can analyze a voice without being in front of the person that's being accused of something that he or she's not done. So that is really interesting bit of technology. Now, my red flags is like Ashley said the other day, some people on another boat found the flotation device, or the seat cushion as I call it, washed up on the beach. And in a text message, Brian had put, was this found near the subdivision or where half a dozen houses is? What does that make you think happened? I don't personally believe, and this is my own opinion, and we're all entitled to our opinions, whether or not people think it's a good opinion or totally rubbish opinion. We're all entitled to have our voice, to say what we think. And I don't personally think Lynette was disappeared from the dinghy. I don't think she disappeared at sea. I think Brian probably did something on land. As bad as that sounds, and I think the only way he would have been possibly able to unalive her is through strangulation. And that is horrible. That tells you the type of person who would be able to strangle someone until they're unalive. Excuse me. I have got a bit of cold, so I am trying to battle through. So, like I said, she anyone that does strangulation is a no-no to me. That they're not credible as a witness. They committed the most horrendous act possible. And it's such a personal thing. Because generally, when you're strangling someone, you're facing them. So you're eye to eye with that person you're trying to take their life away from. So, I firmly believe the sea and the dinghy and the sailboat is just a cover up story and the easy story he thought people would make sense of. But he's made it so much worse. It doesn't make sense whatsoever. And also, Ashley pointed out that Lynette was seen on her last photograph wearing her Apple Watch because it's a powder pink strap and it can be seen miles away. Well, not miles away, but apparently Kylie says she never goes without wearing her watch, even though the battery doesn't last as long. With thinking about that, I believe I heard somewhere, excuse me, why does this do this when I come on air? While I was doing some research and writing some notes down, I wasn't coughing. As soon as I hit record, that's it. I start coughing. So I will try and get through this as quick as I can, but I think this is probably going to be about an hour or just over an hour's long episode, as I also react to the video. And my reactions are my reactions. I know some people like reactions, and I know some people hate reactions. But, they're my reactions, is what I think. And, some other people might think exactly the same. But getting back to the phone, I am pretty sure, without going back and watching every single one of Ashley's videos for the last 18 days, is it now? I'm sure Brian had said that in Lynette's dry bag was her mobile phone, along with like the spare key to the dinghy or the sailboat, along with the passport as well. Things like that didn't add up. But I'm sure he clearly said Lynette had her phone on her. Now we know she had her phone on her when they went to the island for the day before she went missing, because Ashley shows her taking a selfie of herself, enjoying the sun and the weather and everything else. So she's clearly had that phone with her. But my problem with that is I thought I'd heard either Brian say or the Bahamian police said they found Lynette's phone on Soulmate. Now, later, if I've got time, I might go through all the videos and try and find that extraction where the police said, they took her phone from the sailboat. Because if that's the case, then Lynette obviously went missing once they got back onto the Soulmate after the dinghy ride. And, that's just a weird thing. So I can't say, yes, that's definitely happened, because I can't remember it 100%. But I'm probably about 70% sure that is what I heard, because for some reason, even though I got a poor memory, that part sticks in my mind. So we'll go ahead with Ashley's video, and then we'll go on to Matt Johnson's and TJ Ward, who's a private eye. Right. Full screen. Play. A minute. Why is it not at the beginning? There we go.
Aquiline, halcyon environment in the Bahamas. And it was so lovely and so pretty. We were kind of bummed we were working because everyone was having such a good time and enjoying themselves and so laid back and so kind that it was hard to believe that this terrible, shall we say, incident, because at this point we can't say murder. Brian Hooker swears up and down that his wife just bounced off the back of the dinghy. Just, whoops. And says the waves were so rough. It was 2 to 4 foot seas and the wind was howling. And we've discovered that's not true. And now we've discovered something else tonight. And it is big. It's really big. It's one of those things like Brian Koberger, left DNA on the knife sheath big, or took his own car to a murder scene big, right?
Just go and grab some tissue, guys. I'll be right back.
I think we all kind of get it in this day and age that your digital trail will usually trip you up. And I think that may end up happening in this case. I'm just going to say, I don't believe Brian Hooker's story. I haven't met anybody who does. The more I talk to people, and I'm still every single day talking to over a dozen people daily in the Bahamas. And every single one of them, guy's lying. Nothing adds up. Story doesn't add up. Wind doesn't add up. None of it. And tonight, I'm going to show you why the story of the watches doesn't add up. I'm going to tell you about Lynette's watch because that's a big clue. And Brian's watch, that's another clue. I got a couple other things to tell you about. Remember that paddle that Brian says he lost? He calls them oars, right? He's got 2 oars. They've got pins on them like regular oars would have, but there's no pin sockets on the dinghy. So I don't know. I think they just used them as paddles. But he told everybody who would listen, I lost one of those that terrible night that
I just realized my mic was still off. I forgot to turn it back on. As I was saying, please leave your comments in the chat because I do read all the comments. And so I like to see where other people are coming with this story. I really hope he is found guilty soon. I know we can't say he's guilty because everyone's innocent until proven guilty. That's a given law. But other people's comments is a nice idea because I can see where other people are coming from with this story. And so, yeah, so just leave comments in the chat. I will look at them and I will reply to them if I can. I've never replied to comments once the recording's ended, but I will do my best to. Or you can leave a comment on the community page where, you know, it's for everybody to post. So let's get on with this and let's see what happens, shall we? Oh, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, please. Right, let's get back to
Lynette bounced off the back of the dinghy and I got separated in the current and the wind, and she was getting farther and farther, and the 2 to 4 foot waves, I couldn't see her head, and it was getting dark. It was like close to 8 o'clock at night, and she had the keys in the dry bag. She happened to just grab the dry bag on the way out and the lanyard that had the electric key to the engine. Oh, here I go. Yeah, none of that adds up. However, what's really fascinating is he says he lost his paddle. Well, now I know where that paddle may have washed up. Up until now, it's been like, where's this mystery paddle? See if Abaco is not that big. I mean, it kind of looks big, but it's just like a giant swimming pool. And you can see the bottom everywhere, right? It's really, really shallow, like 6, 8, 9 feet. And then at its deepest at high tide, maybe 15. But you can see everything, and everything would wash up on the shores, right? But the paddle has been missing until discovered maybe where it ended up today. I'm going to tell you all about that in a minute. Also, I'm going to get you up to speed on something a lot of you have been talking about. You know that floaty that Jim swears it's like a swim floaty. They used it as kind of seat cushions on the side of the dinghy, like on the hull, the gunnel of the dinghy. But he says, I tossed it to her and I don't know if she got it or not. And it floated away and it ended up on shore where Brian ended up on shore. A lot of you have been asking, you're a little bit confused about where that floaty ended up in comparison to the dinghy. I've got all of that for you, maps, charts, and everything, and all from the rescuers. You're even going to see the rescuer who found it. He videotaped himself going to it and picking it up. So you're going to see that in a minute. And then there's something else. You probably saw in the last couple episodes, we've had some pretty good exclusive pictures. But one of the exclusive pictures we got was a picture of Lynette taking a selfie at the pool, you know, just like not even an hour and a half or 2 before she disappeared forever, at least disappeared until now. And that picture, well, there were so many things you're going to learn about in that picture, but I probably should have made a bigger deal yesterday about the fact that Lynette's wearing a bright blue headscarf in this picture. She's enjoying the sun and the wind on the Atlantic side. And by the way, the picture shows how rough it is over on the Atlantic side of Elbow Key. Yeah, but on the other side.
Also, what is the black thing on her hips or waistline? And on the sunbed, there's a black thing there as well. I don't know what that is, because her dry bag was green, not black. So unless this is something that she keeps her phone in and her purse, and that, so maybe it's like another smaller version of a dry bag that goes into the bigger dry bag. Because as we saw yesterday, not yesterday, because I didn't cover the hookers yesterday, it was the day before, that one of the sale guys, he demonstrated what happens with a dry bag when it's out at sea, and it just floats. And he put the same amount of stuff in there to what Lynette had in hers, and he only folded his over a couple times, but it did leak a tiny bit, but it didn't destroy the stuff inside. But he's now saying he's going to fold his one up properly, because obviously it let a little bit of water in, which isn't drastic, but I guess if you were swimming from your boat to the land, you might want it a bit more protected than what that is. But it'd be interesting to see what this black thing is. I'm presuming it's like another hip bag sort of thing. I don't know what the word is to them. I've got one that I use when I take the dog out and put her poop bags in and things. So that reminds me of that. And maybe it's just extra waterproof.
Great. Like that's the east shore that you're seeing. On the western shore, it's calm and lovely. It's why everybody anchors their boats there, because it's safe. And the lee side of the island has no wind. And that's the story of Brian's night, because everyone we've talked to and all the evidence we've seen, and something you're going to see a little later in this episode, shows there were no 2 to 4 foot seas. And the wind pattern that Brian swears was happening wasn't. No, it wasn't. So Lynette is taking this picture, and she's got this bright blue headscarf. She's also got her green bathing suit cover up and what looks like a black fanny pack. And it's kind of weird, but it looks like she's got a black fanny pack that she's wearing, but it also looks like there's something black that's on the sun chair in front of her. So the deal with that is, when Brian was pressed by the fire and rescue volunteers that busted their asses to help find Lynette the next morning, right? They kept asking him over and over, well, what was she wearing? What are we looking for? What are we looking? What was the last thing she was wearing? What was she wearing when you last saw her? And all Brian said was a 2-piece black bathing suit. Now I've come to learn it's not a bikini. It's actually like a 2-piece that covers your tummy. It might have like a fabric that falls over the midriff maybe, but it's a 2-piece black bathing suit. And that is it. That's all Brian would say. And they pressed him. I talked to them. I talked to the fire, 2 of them. I talked to both fire and rescue guys who were really on lead and on point. And all they would say is that he said she was wearing a 2-piece black bathing suit. Well, bro, we saw the picture. Why didn't you mention the green cover up? Why didn't you mention the bright blue headscarf? That sort of stands out. How about the black fanny pack or whatever that black thing was on the sun chair in front of her while she's taking a selfie? Because if my husband went missing like that, I would be saying, let me think. I know he had a, he had a bandana. He was wearing a bandana. And the swim shorts were, patterned. You'd be combing every annal of your mind to think of details of what your loved one was wearing when she went overboard.
And details are important.
Brian didn't seem to remember she was wearing a bright blue headscarf. It was bright blue, one small, and that stands out. Because not everybody wears a headscarf like that. Brian didn't mention she had that black fanny pack thing, or whatever that black thing was on the sun chair in front of her. I think she's also wearing sunglasses. Didn't mention that. That is huge. The green cover-up? Dude, come on. He didn't mention any of that. Those are huge details that this so-called grieving spouse just, I don't know, black bathing suit, I don't know, maybe two-piece. I smell a rat. Sorry, Brian.
But also, truthfully, how many men could honestly say they can remember what their wife wore the last time they saw him? I'm not sticking up for Brian, no way, and that, because the more I hear of this case, the more I'm leading that he is definitely 150% liar, and he will get caught out, and hopefully he'll be rearrested for more questionings and that. But if someone asks me, well, like, I live with my son, he's 28 years old. I know what he normally wears. But if he suddenly walked out and disappeared and I had to report him as a missing person, I don't know if, even if I scraped to the bottom of my brain, I don't know if I would remember exactly what he was wearing. But that's just me. Other people might be able to say, yeah, I know exactly what he or she's wearing. No problems. And they can describe it to a T. But often enough, men don't take much notice of what their misses are wearing. Because, like, in the past, when I was married, I used to buy a new outfit. I know I'm steering off the case a bit, but how men don't take an interest is, I used to say, what do you think, darling? And they go, yeah, it's okay. Suits you. And I think, what the hell? I wanted a bit more. Oh, yeah, that's really, really lovely on you. I love that. And but he's, and then when I did buy something new and I didn't ask him what did he think about it, and later on in the conversation I would drop, I bought this last week or whenever, but he wouldn't have had the clue if that item was old or new, because he wouldn't remember what I was last wearing or all of my clothes and things. So you would think Brian would possibly know exactly, or some more details of what his wife was wearing. He might not get it 100%, because when you're in that moment, your mind goes blank and you really struggle to remember what that person was last wearing. So although he may have got some items missing, like he might have said she's wearing a hip bag, she had a cover up, but he might forget the headscarf and he might forget the sunglasses. So there's little things like that it doesn't put 100% sway it for me that he's guilty just because he can't remember what she was wearing the day before.
But if you get arrested again, well, if you get arrested and charged, you weren't charged the first time. If you do, and I just have a sneaking suspicion you will be, you're going to have to answer to all of this. You're going to have to answer to why a grieving spouse wouldn't give a shit about what his wife was wearing when you last saw her in this tragedy. It's a big deal for me. It's been a big deal for others too. Friends of Lynette's have been apoplectic about this. I've been talking to Blaine Stevenson a lot. He and his wife Marnie are also sailors, and they're literally sun up to sundown trying to put the pieces together on this case. And that really pissed them off. You didn't even tell the rescuers about everything, the scarf, the cover up, the black thing. Like, what the hell? I can see why they're mad. I'm mad. I didn't know Lynette, and I'm mad. Okay, let's talk about her Apple Watch. Early in this story, we told you that the Royal Bahamian Police got Lynette's Apple Watch. Originally, there was a story that broke that it might have been on a beach. That was dispelled. It was not. They got it off Soulmate, their 46-foot catch, the sailboat that they've been living on for the last 4 years. The Royal Bahamians got it off the sailboat. Little pink Apple Watch. So that is a huge detail now, because of the photo that we uncovered. That photo, that exclusive photo that, yes, drop dead serious, we got that. That exclusive photo shows what sure as hell looks like a powder pink Apple Watch and band on Lynette's hand, on her wrist. Just take a look. That's not a tan line. That pretty much looks like an Apple Watch on her wrist right there. I don't know anybody with tan lines that huge and that significant that could be caught in a photo like that. That looks like the Apple Watch. So, my friends, work with me here. If you are at the Abaco Inn on Elbow Key, up until at least 7 o'clock, because that's the last photo we have of Brian heading down towards the dock by himself without her. So we know at least they're there at 7 p.m. If you are getting in the dinghy and you're heading back to your keel boat that is anchored only about 12 minutes away, dinghy ride, around the corner, off to the left, south down Elbow Key towards Tahiti Beach. It's beautiful. How did your Apple Watch that's on your wrist late in the afternoon, how did that get onto the sailboat? Because you never made it to the sailboat. Lynette never made it to the sailboat. This much Brian tells us, right? She bounced off the back. On the way to the sailboat, the seas were rough, my friend. What does George Costanza say? Yeah, the seas were 2 to 4 feet. She bounced off the back. We never made it to the sailboat. She had the keys and I floated for 9 hours. Bullshit. I floated for 9 hours across the Sea of Abaco and ended up on the shores of Marsh Harbor. Okay, so neither of you made it back to the sailboat. How did her little pink Apple Watch make it back to the sailboat, Brian?
And possibly her mobile phone as well, which is what I'm pretty sure I heard someone say. The police found the phone of Lynette's on the boat. So that would give details of a timeline when she last used the phone and who she messaged, who she called, and vice versa.
Brian, you got some splaining to do. Because if she's wearing that Apple Watch and she went overboard, it should still be on her wrist, wherever she is. It shouldn't be on board Soulmate for the Royal Bahamian Police to collect. Not only that, but we all know how electronics work, don't we? We all know that your hip bone's connected to your leg bone and your Apple Watch is connected to your Apple phone. Yeah, and I can tell you that Lynette's Apple Watch was connected to her iPhone because her daughter, Carly Aylesworth, tells me she constantly did find my phone, like I do, all the time. If I didn't, I would never. Lynette did that all the time, according to her daughter. So the Apple Watch is connected to the iPhone. So if that Apple Watch made it out on board Soulmate, and it probably connected to the internets. That's the kind of stuff you can find. That's the kind of stuff the experts call digital exhaust. And if her phone as well made it up onto Soulmate,
which is what I said,
that's going to connect to the internet too. They had Starlink. They had Starlink really high up on their mast too. And I've been told that the way that would affect things is that you'd actually connect further away. You know, if your Starlink is low down, you might come towards the boat and connect, you know, close to the boat. But if it's up high, you'll connect much farther out because you gotta. I've been told that. I can't attest to that myself. I haven't done the test myself, but others have said that they might have connected to the Starlink sooner. If this whole story of Brian is just horseshit, and there was nobody going over the side of the boat, maybe that dinghy made it all the way back to Soulmate with Lynette and her watch and her phone and their passports and everything else he says was in that dry bag. Maybe they made it back onto Soulmate. And maybe something happened on Soulmate. Maybe. Because I'll tell you what, with the story that Brian is spinning, you didn't make it to Soulmate, so your devices should not have made it to Soulmate. And if those devices made it to Soulmate, you're worked. If Lynette's device made it to soulmate, game over.
Exactly.
If Brian's devices made it to soulmate,
game over. I hope we can get a bit more important information, like he's got a warrant out for his arrest or to be detained for further questioning, because I wonder if the Bahama police are watching all these episodes on YouTube to gather some information. And I also wonder if Brian Hooker is actually watching YouTube. How do we know he isn't? So, he's just digging himself a bigger grave, a bigger hole to put himself into. And I bet when the evidence comes out is put towards him, I think he'll wish the ground opened up and swallowed him. I really do. And I hope that we're not kept for ages and ages without no sort of like positive things that have happened, that the police can confirm that has happened or hasn't happened. A bit like the Nancy Guthrie story. That's been going on for 80 days now. I hope this case does not go as long as that. I said in my video last week, I think it'd be Thursday, I believe. I'd have to check my notebook. But I think I said Thursday that we would get to know something more. And maybe where he's gone, I think it's in the part of America, Michigan, is it? I'm hoping Michigan police have got a load of stuff that they can call him in for questioning. But carry on, otherwise it take ages.
If anybody checked an email, or you just got on board and you hand shook with your own, Starlink, game over, because nobody was supposed to be within 1,000 feet of soulmate when Brian's emergency happened. And then he was set adrift 1,000 yards away from soulmate and getting further and further and further to the west until he went up on Marsh Harbor 9 hours later in a wind that was like, I know there's been discrepancies on the wind, but more and more we're getting reports that wind was it really wasn't. It wasn't 2 to 4 foot seas, and it wasn't screaming out there. Maybe as you got closer to Marsh Harbor, then the wind would have picked up a little more and would have been busier. But your emergency happened in the lee side of Elbow Key, where it's basically snorkeling weather. So there's a lot that's not adding up. And that Apple Watch of Lynette's, boy, I sure hope that her Apple Watch that she loved will tell the story. Let me tell you a little story about her Apple Watch. I guess she loved it so much that the battery was starting to get weak. Mine did once. I had to replace mine. It just wouldn't hold a charge. It almost would die before I'd go to bed. And so with Lynette, that was the case. Her little powder pink Apple Watch was getting too weak, and she couldn't even wear it through the night to do like the sleep, the sleep analysis that your watch will do for you. She couldn't do that because her watch wouldn't last. She just couldn't hold a charge that long. And this is according to her daughter, who was just there on the boat just a month and a half ago or so, visiting. So Lynette needed a new watch. And Brian told Carly, Lynette's daughter, that he bought her a new watch. Not an Apple Watch, though. He bought her a different kind of watch that is more like, the way I've heard, is more like his. And I think you can load Navionics on his. It's more a technical watch, but it didn't fit. Apparently, this watch did not fit. And so the plan was, when Carly was there, we'll give it to Carly. And Carly was thrilled and planned to take that watch with her because her mom and Brian said, this watch doesn't fit. It's new. Brian got it for me. You can have it, sweetheart. And she forgot it on the boat. She forgot it on the charger in the boat. The green watch that Brian bought for Lynette. Where's that watch? What's going on with that watch? Did the Royal Bahamians find that watch? Because it might have been in a drawer somewhere. Might have been somewhere on that boat. Did they get it? Did they collect that evidence? Because that's important. That watch would also be important. And when I mentioned that it's similar to Brian's watch, let's talk a little bit about Brian's watch, because there's been a couple things that we've noticed and we've been tracking it. And I haven't brought you the story till now because I've been waiting on some answers. And I'm not sure I have all of them, but I'll tell you where I'm at. You see Brian in all of his social media wearing this very light colored watch, big, chunky, light colored watch. And from what Carly tells me, Brian's stepdaughter, Lynette's daughter, that watch was very technical. And from what others have said, it's likely that he was able to track his navionics and load navionics on that. And you can actually do so much with your watches these days if you're a mariner. I know my ex-husband uses an EPIRB when he's out on the Long Island Sound, because he goes out a lot alone. And if anything ever happens, he can actually like send out a signal with his watch. And then they'll come and rescue him. It'll actually send out a signal and your exact location will be pinned and rescuers will know to come and get you. So a lot of people who are boat savvy and spend a lot of time on boats will have these very specialized watches, like the EPIRB, or like my ex-husband has the EPIRB, or like Brian had this specialized watch. I haven't nailed down exactly everything about that watch yet, but if you know, please put in the comments and email us the info, because you guys have been amazing. I've already had several emails from people in the Bahamas who know people in the Bahamas, who have cameras in the Bahamas, who've taken pictures. And I am so incredibly thankful that you've done that. And I encourage you to continue sending us anything you might have, images, information about the watch that Brian wears. If you see the image on your screen in a moment, send it to dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. Again, dropdeadserious, that's me, info@gmail.com. It's super helpful. Dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. If you send us anything you might have, look at your photos from the Abaco Inn that night from 6 p.m. all the way through till 8 p.m. See if you caught Lynette and Brian in the background. It's so important to see the timestamps and what they were doing, because there's a lot of weird stuff that's coming in. I've got more episodes.
And also, I don't know about Brian's watch, but Lynette's watch being an iPhone, if it was exactly an iPhone watch, that would probably track her heart rate. So it may show through forensics that what her heart rate was just before the watch disconnected. And then if it's like my watch, I've got a Samsung watch, and with my watch, there's so much more you can do with it. You can log your blood pressures on it. You can take an ECG reading of it. You can tell, your heart rate, how many steps you've taken, if you're snoring at night, how good quality your sleep was. So all of that should be downloadable by, the forensics guys. And if Lynette was having her life threatened, in that moment, her heart rate probably would be pretty high. And the same with Brian's. If Brian's watch can detect heartbeats, register his heart rate, they can marry the two up together and find at the same time, or almost the same time, how high their heart rates were. Because surely if you're unaliving somebody and you're burying them, your heart rate's going to be going 10 to the flipping dozen. It's going to be like a Grand National race. Your heart rate is going to be so fast that you can't keep up with it. And same with Lynette's. Her heart rate, I would imagine, would be going through the roof, because you're scared. And, you don't expect your loved one to do these sort of things to you. So, your heart rate's going to be raised. And I hope the forensics can get that type of detail, because that would also make or break this case as well. But I'll carry on.
It's ahead on that. Also, if you don't want to send them to me, I get it. I understand you. I have another place where you can send them. CGIS Tips. Okay, that is an app. It is the Coast Guard's app for anonymous tips. It's just go to your app store, look for CGIS tips, and you'll see it right there. It'll say Coast Guard Anonymous Tips, boink, and there you can put it there. You can also go to the website, P3, that's the letter P, the number 3, tips.com. And there's a QR code we have on the screen as well. So pictures, video, and any information you have about the watch that you see Brian wearing in a lot of these videos. But about that watch, we are told by Carly and many others, he never took that watch off. He wore that watch all the...
It must be a different watch or a newer watch, because the photos Ashley showed about 5 minutes ago clearly show a black strapped watch, unless he's able to just change the straps and like the bit surrounding the watch. He might have multiple different straps that he can change. But on the last 2 photos she showed, it showed that he had a black watch on, and you can tell that's like lime green.
Time. Like it was glued. And I don't disbelieve that, because there's a curious little picture of Brian after he was arrested without the watch on, and a big, big tan line where the watch would have been. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is after he was released. Like, where's your watch, bro? You never, ever took that watch off. And for a while there, I was playing parlor games with an expert here, and we were trying to figure out if he took the watch off when he was handcuffed in the police boat and oops, fell overboard. Because you remember that story? They arrested him on Soulmate, and then they put him in the police boat, and they drove him to Grand Bahama Island in Freeport, where they have the holding facility, the detention center for him, and the courthouse. And he fell out and had to be rescued by the police officers. Like, first of all, Bahamian police, what? How did you let that happen? You put a handcuffed guy in your boat. He had a flotation device on. Put a handcuffed guy in your boat, and you're not kind of like watching him or next to him or making sure that can't happen. It happened. Out he went, his lawyer said, and they had to rescue him. And then he got injured and had to get some treatment for some superficial injuries on his leg.
Oh, boo-hoo.
But I was wondering if when he was in the water, he was like, I don't want my navionics, I don't want them to have my navionics and show you everywhere I've actually been. I had to dispel that thought. So there's this image of him, and I believe he's outside the police lockup the day after he's released, because he's released at 8:00 at night. So this picture's broad daylight, and he's holding his precious light colored watch. It's sort of lime green, I think, really, really light lime green. He's holding it in his hands, almost as though he may have gone back to the police station to collect his, personal effects. Because when you get arrested, usually you strip down of all your personal effects, your watch, your earrings, whatever you got, your nose ring, your thing ring, and then you get it when you're released. But at 8:00 at night, this is not video of him holding his watch in the dark. And I know it's 8:00 at night. He was released at 8, and I know it's dark at 8. This is bright daylight. So my assumption is it might be the next morning, and that would be Tuesday, the 14th of April. He's released on Monday, the 13th of April at 8 at night. I think this photo may be Tuesday, the 14th. And that day, so he's holding his watch, and there you go. That watch that was off his wrist, suddenly he's got it back on his wrist. So that's super interesting. And he does these interviews with big major networks. He picks CBS, ABC, and NBC. How cliche. Don't you know all the true crime viewers are watching here? Mm-hmm. This is where you're going to get the most viewers, is in true crime podcasting. Come on, Brian, get with the times. Anyway, he does his interview with some of them, and he's got his watch off. I'm just a little fascinated by why the Royal Bahamian Police didn't keep that watch. Like, why didn't you seize that watch as evidence? It's a digital trail, y'all. Like, it tells you everything. And that could have held so much evidence.
Perhaps
but they didn't
realize it was a smart one.
The Royal Bahamian Police didn't keep that watch. You can see him holding it in his hands as he's leaving. And by the way, when I say leaving, yeah, that guy couldn't wait. He got his emergency passport. And the next day you saw the pictures of him flying the coop, blowing this pup stand. Yeah, he decided that Bahamas was no longer for him, even though he said, I will never leave the Bahamas without my wife, Lynette. I will never stop searching for her. I'm going to try and rent a boat to go and search for her. You didn't rent that boat. Certainly not from the number that you were given by the search and rescue fella that you asked, where can I rent a boat? Who can I call? He gave you the number. You never called them. We checked. So that's Brian Hooker. You know, I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt here because that's what his lawyers asked us to do, but it's harder and harder and harder because all the stuff he says doesn't match the actual facts, doesn't match the tide patterns, doesn't match the wind, doesn't match the timing, doesn't match, you name it, doesn't match.
Like I said at the beginning, there's more holes in this story than there's in a calendar or a sieve, whatever people want to call them. And I think my title, Hook, Line and Sinker, is just great that I made up. I thought, well, his name's Hooker. And then I thought, he's being caught, hook, line and sinker. So I thought, right, I'm going to have to put that into my thumbnail. But yeah, it's just so crazy. And, you know, like Ashley said, that he said that he would stay here till Lynette's found. But the very next day, he's back on the plane going home. So say to his ailing mother, she may be poorly, but he didn't always, if he went there, he didn't necessarily stay with her because he went and found himself a lawyer or two. And I hope those lawyers are seeing all these videos on YouTube, what other people think of Brian and what they think happened and proven right versus wrong. I hope they're watching it all. And I don't know if lawyers are allowed to do that when they take on someone's case. You know, if they've got to go into it blindsided, so that as if they've never heard the story before. So here we go.
The one thing I can say is that if I spent 5 days in a Bahamian detention cell, I might be a little concerned that they could lock me up again. And if I'm innocent, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in a Bahamian prison. So I can understand why maybe somebody might get on a plane and leave the jurisdiction when the getting's good. But if my husband were still floating out there, I wouldn't. I mean, I say that, I really don't think I would leave him. I don't think I would leave. I know one thing. I'd have rented any boat I could find. I'd have been out there. I'd have asked the search and rescue guys, can I just come with you? Pick me up every day. You know, that didn't happen. He's a lot of talk about the dinghy and his SIM card and a lot of that stuff. But he does not ask much about the search. He never asks the search and rescue guy, where's the command center? How many boats are out? What's happening? What's being done to help find my wife? Doesn't ask. See why it's hard to give him the benefit of the doubt? Sorry, lawyer lady. It's just hard. Okay. And also, come on, lawyer lady. He didn't even say what she was wearing to the search and rescue people. So yeah, benefit of the doubt is a real struggle. It's Everest at this point. So let's talk a little bit about the missing paddle, because Brian says he lost an oar, right? He used it as a paddle. It has a pin on it, but I never saw any kind of receptacle for the pins in this dinghy. So I assume they use these oars as paddles, but he said he lost one. And we've all been curious about where this thing, you know, ended up, because the Sea of Abaco, it's going to end up on some shore. It's like a big, giant lake. And nobody's been able to find the dry bag or the missing oar paddle slash. I'm going to call it a paddle just for this purpose. And we've learned something interesting, especially as pertains to the pattern of the wind and a neighbor that found a paddle that washed up on shore right after Brian Hooker ended up at Marsh Harbor. But it did not wash up at Marsh Harbor. It didn't end up anywhere near Marsh Harbor. It ended up on Lubber's quarters. Okay, so work with me here, because it's really important to know that if you're on the western shore of Elbow Key, where Brian says, holy hell broke loose, and you start drifting, you're going to go with the wind and the tides and the currents. And the wind was blowing briskly southwest. I've seen the video. I've seen the video of the exact time between 7 and 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. And I've seen the wind, and it is blowing in a southerly direction and towards the west. Okay. So if you're in that little dinghy, you're going to blow that way too, because the dinghy's above water. It's got some profile, and the wind is going to catch it, which would put you squarely on lubbers. Brian, if you were floating, you would have blown into lubbers, because as it turns out, we've learned your paddle most probably blew onto lubbers, because there are some neighbors there of a guy I spoke with today that found a paddle on their shore halfway down lubbers. So if you look at lubbers, midway to the island and then a little further south, that's where the paddle washed up on lubbers. Why would your paddle end up on lubbers and you ended up way north, skipping over lubbers and heading all the way to Marsh Harbor, 4 miles away? How'd you miss lubbers? Your paddle didn't, apparently. I will tell you this. These neighbors found the paddle and they gave it to the police. I am told that they were shown a photo of the matching paddle on board Soulmate, and they said it looked the same. I have not had confirmation that it's the same paddle. It has not been confirmed to me that this is in fact Brian's missing paddle, but it sure is hanky that a paddle washed up on shore and these neighbors picked it up and took it to the police, right? But that wind pattern where that paddle ended up, Brian, if that's your paddle, how did you end up so far north? How did you blow so far north? But your paddle ended up so far south, it went right in to the midway point and even a little further south than the midway point of lubbers, and washed up on the shore for those neighbors to pick up. Curious, isn't it?
Maybe the weight difference between Brian in the dinghy and the paddle. Maybe the paddle can float one direction, same as like the dry bag or the flotation seat thing. And Brian drifted further because he's heavier. There's things you got to take into consideration on that one.
So let's talk about some other floaties and patterns. A lot of you have talked about the green flotation swimmy thing. It's almost like what you would use as a flutter board. It's really not a flotation device, but it's kind of spongy and you can sit on it, which is what Brian and Lynette used to do. They'd sit on the gunnels of their dinghy while they were driving. And he says, I grabbed that green one and I threw it to her, and I don't know if she ever got it. There were 2 life jackets in the bottom of the dinghy when the fire and rescue saw the dinghy over, marooned on the shore after his long night of floating. Okay. I know the wind wasn't screaming because I've seen it. And I've seen the marine patterns. I've heard people who've been in dinghies in that exact place tell me no way, no how was that wind so brutal you couldn't throw a life jacket. There were no giant waves. Right 150 meters offshore in the lee of Elbow Key, it was not a screaming wind at 7, 7:30, or 8 o'clock at night on Saturday, April 4th. Witnesses have said it. Videos have said it. A woman I talked to today who was in her dinghy going back and forth along that shore, all the way down to Tahiti Beach, all the way past the Abaco Inn and the White Sound Channel, and then all the way to the Firefly Inn where her boat was anchored. She and her husband were in the dinghy, and she said there's no way we would have gone out in the dinghy if it were the conditions he was describing. So why didn't you throw the life jackets? 2 of them. Why didn't you put one on and then swim to her with the other one? You're a U.S. Marine, right? Okay, don't get me started. In any case, he says he throws the green city cushion, little floaty swimmy thing. And that thing ends up all the way over on Marsh Harbor with him. It made the same journey that he made, he said. And he actually said, that's incredible. Because, and a lot of you have asked this question in the comments. You said, I'm a little confused about where the green floaty device was compared to where he washed up on shore. So he washes up on the shore, on the eastern shore of Marsh Harbor, 4 miles away from Elbow Key. He crosses the Sea of Abaco all night for 9 hours. Wouldn't take 9 hours. Not even in a wind, even in a breeze. It wouldn't take that long. And the green flotation swim cushion ends up 100 yards or so south of him on the same shore. And I want to show you now the fire and rescue volunteer who found it and picked it up and videotaped picking it up. So take a look.
This is, I'm retrieving the blue float that Brian Hooker said that he threw out of his boat in when his wife went missing. He said it was a green cushion that he described just like this. We saw this from the water on Sunday morning, and it is Tuesday morning, and we have come back, and I'm pretty sure this is what Brian described.
And I think this little graphic will help, because this shows, and this is drawn by the fire and rescue guys, the D is where the dinghy was found on Marsh Harbor's shore, and the F is where the floaty was found on the shore. You can see how close they were, just 100 yards apart. And if you zoom out from there, you can see, as you sort of look to the east, you can see the landmass that is Lubbers Quarters, and that's the landmass that miraculously Brian missed as he was floating all the way across the Sea of Abaco. And we zoom out even more, and you get to the place where this whole mess started, and that's over at Elbow Key, right off the shore, 150 meters off the shore. He says, oh, Lynette went off the back, and then, oh, hell, whatever. I started my giant float that took 9 hours to get all the way over to Marsh Harbor. But now you can kind of see that he missed that northern tip of Lubbers and ended up on that full float across to Marsh Harbor. And that little green floaty stayed with him the whole way. And yet, if that paddle is his, it didn't. And we have not seen Lynette's dry bag, because Lynette didn't squeeze all the air out of her dry bag normally. You can see it in her dinghy often, where she just folds it over a couple times like most people do, and then cinches it, and that's the dry bag. So it would have floated more than likely where that potential paddle ended up. It would be somewhere. That dry bag would be somewhere. And that dry bag is supposedly containing his passport, her passport, their additional key, how convenient, to the dinghy, and maybe some other various and sundry things. I think her phone as well. So it hasn't turned up. Curious though, very curious why it wouldn't blow in the same pattern as that green flotation swimmy thing, or even the paddle, because those went two different directions. And so did his dinghy. What's so interesting is I've spoken to that fire and rescue representative who picked up that floaty cushion. And this is the same fire and rescue representative with whom Brian was texting back and forth madly in the days after Lynette disappeared. And one of the things he said to this representative, when he was told that it was found just 100 yards of where his dinghy had washed up on shore, he said, incredible to think we floated all that way 100 yards apart. Yes, that is incredible, especially since the oar that may be yours washed up on Lubbers, way south of where you are. Now, I did speak with Blaine Stevenson about the difference between an oar floating and a cushion or a dinghy floating. And he did say that an aluminum oar might fill with water somewhat and then be partially submerged. It doesn't have the high profile, so it's not catching the wind as much. So it's really traveling more with the current and the tide than maybe with the wind. So there is that possibility as well. And I will give you that. But you can't ignore the wind that was blowing all the way to the southwest. right? It was an east wind and it was blowing to the south and it was blowing to the west. Okay. And so your high profile dinghy would have been blown more because it's light, right? By the wind. You would have ended up on Lubbers. In any case, Lynette would have too. If you really told the truth, Lynette would have also, more than likely with the flood patterns, the tide patterns, the wind, she would have also ended up on Lubbers. But I will also add this because I spoke with one of the homeowners there who has told me that there is extensive bull shark patrolling, so to speak, along the shore of Lubbers, eastern shore of Lubbers, and that he doesn't even swim off his dock because he regularly sees bull shark activity swimming up and down the shore of Lubbers. So again, I don't for a minute believe that Lynette went in the water the way Brian says she did. I'm a boater and I just know that the whole story sounds like shit, right? So I don't believe that. But I just do want to mention that over on the shore at Lubbers, that eastern shore of Lubbers, there is extensive bull shark activity. And that comes from a homeowner who doesn't even swim off his own dock because of that. One other thing I wanted to show you, because it took a little research to figure this out. Many of you have probably seen Brian and Lynette on paddle boards on their social media, and they are paddling around Marsh Harbor. And of course, you would think, well, might he then have the lay of the land? If he was paddling so close to shore, he would see things in advance. It's a very smart thinking pattern, but I want to dispel because we've learned the actual location of where Brian and Lynette were paddleboarding, and it wasn't out on that eastern shore of Marsh Harbor where he washed up. It was actually quite a ways away from it. So Brian and Lynette had purchased or were renting a mooring ball in the actual anchorage of Marsh Harbor. And that's a very protected harbor inside the island of Marsh Harbor. So it's kind of like on the northern part, it dips in as a big bay, and you can see, the bay is curved, and all the sailboats, hook up to mooring balls or throw their own anchor out. And they were renting a mooring ball, which means it's a permanent anchor. There's a ball floating, you just hook up to it and you're already anchored. Very little work. You don't have to set your hook. So they were renting a mooring ball, which also gave them the rights to be at the Conch Inn, which was on land, and they could avail of the services there, the pool and the bar and the restaurant and all the rest. And so when they got off their sailboat, and we showed you the pictures, we circled around their boat, Soulmate. Again, that name, Soulmate, given what we're dealing with, right? They circled around. So I circled around Soulmate and showed you pictures in Marsh Harbor. They got those paddle boards off Soulmate and they actually paddle boarded inside the harbor. And they paddle boarded, if you're looking at your map, up to the top of the horseshoe there. You can see just off to the west side. There's some creeks and they were in there. I've gotten the local report that the images in the background of where Brian and Lynette were paddleboarding are indeed in those creeks inside that harbor, not way out and around on the eastern shore of Marsh Harbor. So anybody who thought, well, he may have been getting some ideas, by checking out the eastern shore of Marsh Harbor, that wasn't what they were doing with the paddleboarding. And it's just helpful sometimes to dispel these things, because I know that sleuthing is a serious business. And so many of the clues on social media will actually tell you very important things like, what about that pink Apple Watch, right? That's sleuthing. Seeing that photo and seeing that she's likely wearing that pink Apple Watch in her selfie pictures back at the Abaco Inn, that's sleuthing. But sometimes they're a red herring or a dead end. And I just wanted to make sure that if you're watching, this one is a dead end. This paddleboarding was inside the harbor. So it wouldn't have given you any knowledge of that other shore on the outside of the harbor. So there you have it, folks. And if you subscribe, thank you. I appreciate it. And if you like, I appreciate that too. And if you join the membership, thank you so much. And I'm going to do an exclusive Ask Me Anything this Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern. What's the date on that? Let me look real quickly. It is Sunday, the 26th. So Sunday, April 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you're in the membership, please log on. We actually have a lot of fun during these things. I think it was the last one in Vermont, and there was wine and lasagna and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. But if you want to subscribe, thank you. I appreciate it. And if you like, I appreciate that Lindsay and I know a lot about.
Hi everyone, I'm back again. I just had a break because I was feeling really tired. Didn't sleep well last night. About 2 hours, that's all I got. Yeah, so the next guy I've got on is TJ Ward. He's a private investigator, and he actually analyzes voices through like a special program they've got, and he can do all this without having the person in front of him, so in my opinion, he's better than a lie detector test. And he also, I only watched like 5 minutes of his 5-10 minutes of his video, but he's like me. He seems to believe that Lynette didn't go missing from the sea or from the dinghy. I still say she's gone missing from the land. But yeah, we don't really know, this investigation goes further on, and hopefully we will learn more as the new week starts this week on what happened to her. Ashley's bringing out another video later today. So yeah, so we'll just have to see from there. But I think this TJ Ward, he's a really good private investigator. He was saying how he's solved one case using this program, and there's not many PIs that are allowed to use this program. So from what I get, you're given certain permissions to use it. And Matt Johnson, he says that he's going to pass this video over to Kaylee for Kaylee to have a look at. And then maybe Kaylee then can take it to the Bahamian Police Department and see what they think about it. And I really hope that Kaylee can get back out there to, do some more investigation, because obviously when you go out there once, you'll realize once you go home that you should have did this, you should have went there, and so forth. So I'm sure that's all going through her head. So I think she needs to go back out there and start asking more questions, especially now more people are remembering things and they're checking their digital photos. And that, like, we saw a photo with Lynette on the sunbed, and then we saw earlier Lynette doing a selfie. So people are now starting to gradually look through their footage just to double check if they happen to have a picture of Brian and Lynette together. Because they need to bring up a timeline, exactly what happened, because Brian's so-say timeline stinks. It doesn't add up whatsoever. So hopefully we get more answers this next week. So I'll go ahead and play this and then see what you guys think of it. But I think this guy is very credible. And, I think what he knows is worth a weight in gold. I really do. So here we go.
At this point in time, but from my understanding of what I saw from this test, I don't believe she's in the water. I really don't.
I have a very special guest on the program, a private investigator who works with families of missing persons abroad. He worked on the Natalee Holloway case, and what helped him in that investigation was equipment and a program called the Layered Voice Analysis. He ran an analysis on Brian Hooker's statements, including his message to his friend, his account of what happened to Lynette when she went missing. What he found is fascinating. How it could help this case, crack it wide open for investigators there in the Bahamas. I'll share with you his findings, but first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Now, the case of missing Lynette Hooker. And here to help make sense about all of this, I have TJ Ward, private investigator. You're former law enforcement, you're a pilot, you're a former medic. You've done numerous jobs, but you're also very famous for a case, searching for Natalee Holloway, who disappeared in 2005. She was on a trip, her disappearance there. You helped the family with that case. Thank you for being here with your insight.
I was hired on that case in July of 2005 by Beth Holloway.
How did you get involved in that case?
Well, when I started seeing Deepak, Satish, and Vandersloot on all the media, TV, talking about what happened to Natalee, I started recording them with a layered voice analysis, a 21st century truth technology, and I could see that they weren't telling the truth. They were lying. So I picked up the phone and I called Beth when she was in Aruba, and I spoke to her ex-husband, now, and Jug Twitty. I spoke to him and told him what I had, and they said, so after that they went and talked to the FBI and the Aruba authorities, and they said, well, they don't allow that along with a polygraph in Aruba. So I said, well, what they didn't know, that I don't need them in front of me, and they don't need to know that I'm recording them. So after that, I said, let's do a good old-fashioned investigation, and Beth and Jug hired me. And then I got involved. I went to Aruba. I went there almost 12 times. So when I got there, I met with the Aruba authorities and the FBI and told them what I was going to be doing with them. And I started interviewing people and talking to people and getting information. So, but anyway, we looked, and in 2010, I don't know if you recall, the FBI and the Aruba authorities got involved. Vandersloot called Beth and said, I'll tell you where your daughter and what happened to her for $250,000. So Beth's lawyers came down here from New York, and we set them up in the Marriott and recorded him, gave him $25,000 in cash. And right there, that was an extortion case. But the FBI said, well, they didn't want to do anything with him until they wanted to watch him a while and see what he was doing. Well, he slipped away from the FBI when he was in Aruba, and took off and went to Peru. And as you're well aware, I met Stephanie Flores gambling, using the money that Beth gave him. And she had gone back to his hotel room one evening while he was in a shower. She got on the computer and started seeing all this about Natalee, what was going on in Aruba. So when he came out of the shower, she started questioning him about Natalee Holloway. He got real angry with her and hit her in the face and broke her neck and killed her, then fled. A taxi cab driver, after a lookout was put out on him, ID'd him, and he was arrested. He admitted to Stephanie Flores' murder, and he's now serving time in a Peruvian prison. He will not get out until 2036. Well, Beth and got to with the authorities in Peru and got them to extradite to Alabama. The FBI got involved, and he admitted that he killed Natalee and how he killed her. So they gave him 20 years in the federal penitentiary, which is going to serve concurrent where he is in Peru. So when he gets out there, he's going to make his way over to he's going to have a whole new look in life after he finally gets in federal penitentiary than where he is now. You know, he got married and had a baby while he was in prison in Peru, and then got caught with a girlfriend. She's bringing drugs in. They added another 10 years to his time onto him when they got caught with the drugs. So it's insane. It really is.
Yeah, he's a piece of work, but I'm really glad to talk to you about this case because of your success with that one. And, you know, they may not be identical, but when we're talking about this missing lady right here, 55-year-old Lynette Hooker, who went missing, according to her husband, after falling off that dinghy there in the Bahamas, you know what it's like to search for a missing person in another country. So what are your initial thoughts right now?
Well, first of all, when you get there, and especially if I could get involved in this case, you have to deal with the Bahamian authorities. They're in charge. It's their case. Goodness.
Let's hope that TJ can get involved in this case, because I think, you know, he would be the gem in anyone's crown. You know, he needs to be in this case. He needs to be assigned to this case. And he can get the answers that nobody else can. So I'm hoping somehow he can get into this case. I don't know how he would be able to get into the case. You know, if it's a case of like Matt Johnson there contacting the Bahamas police, or even the Michigan police where Brian is, saying, look, this person here is very credible in what he gets out of people and analyzes voice using the special program that he's got, then, you know, maybe they can let him in then. So I think he has to be recommended by somebody that has some clout behind them to be able to do a case. And I really hope he does, because, you know, from what I've seen of him, and I've been on his website as well. If I quickly can go on there, just need to lower this down because Matt's put the website on there. Comments, where was the website? Oh, here we go. It might help if I actually had my glasses on, wouldn't it? So if I quickly share this tab with you, just to give you some background on him, I just check that you can see what I can see. So, you know, let me get these on. So that's his website page. It's www.tjwardpi.com. So simple one to do. To provide private citizens and corporations with the advanced intelligence and cutting edge to investigate services normally only available to government officials. So, you know, he has got this. And then there's a video linked onto his webpage, podcast, Crime Talk with TJ Ward and Chris Montgomery. TJ Ward interview on Court TV. So he's been on there. Depending how long that is, I might add that to the end of this one. So he's done quite a lot, like Bloody Knife in Basement, husband Brian Walsh arrested. man charged after billionaire heiress vanishes. So you can see he's been busy. He's been on all these channels. You know, it's amazing. And then Desiree was murdered in 2017 over Thanksgiving weekend, about 20 minutes away from her grandmother's hotel in Jamaica. After taking a closer look at the circumstances, her mother is sure that the perpetrator is someone that they already knew her and lured her away. And, you know, she's still asking, Desiree's family is asking people to politely ask the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, to look at her case. And then that's the email thing. And they're trying to raise funds and that. So I don't know how much he charges, but he's definitely got a lot of background on him. So take a look yourself. Reviews. Write a review. Couple reviews I'll just read out. I've searched for my daughter for more than 30 years after she was moved by my former wife. When I enlisted TJ Ward's help, he was able to locate her in less than 12 hours. What the heck? You know, another one. I have worked with TJ Ward for more than 30 years. He is dedicated and highly skilled professional. His resolute drive and commitment to an excellence makes him one of the best in his field. His extensive knowledge and friends across the law enforcement serve to make him a highly effective investigator, and I'm privileged to be with him. Another review, a visiting family member lost or left her purse with credit cards, cash, and medical information in Midtown shopping area. The police were slow to respond, so I called TJ Ward, and within minutes, Mr. Ward and his colleagues went to the scene. I have never seen such a quick response. They were courteous, polite, and professional, and found the purse. Our family member was ever so grateful. TJ Ward and his associate, cannot thank them enough. So, you know, I know people like this only publish the good reviews. But, you know, I might actually see if I can contact the Bohemian police and say, you know, can they enlist this guy? Because he needs to, you know, be shared. You know, he needs to have his details shared with them and get this case solved. And by the looks of it, when he's got his teeth into a case, he's like a bulldog. He doesn't stop, you know, and he gets his answers quickly, going by the reviews. And that this case could be done and drawn in, you know, amount of days.
That the United States Coast Guard is now involved with the Bahamian authorities looking for her in the water for the last 10 days. And ironically, nothing's been seen. Now, you have to understand that the waters in the Bahamas, I mean, you can see 15 feet deep to the bottom in the Bahamas. I know, I've been there many, many times. And my theory is that something happened to her outside of being on this boat and water.
Exactly.
And of course, you've heard the daughter talk about his irrational disorder with his family, how he grabbed one of his daughters and tried to choke her out. And they knew about that. So, I think there was a lot of problems going on with him and his wife. I mean, he's pleading now, he was married to her 25 years, and how much he's missing her and his crying when he was on the media.
Fake crying.
I didn't take any of that real serious because I think something's happened to her before she even got on that boat. I don't think she got on the boat. I don't think she's in the water. I think something else has happened to her and he played this scenario up with the water or storm that came in to clear him from what he may have done to her. There's something just not right. And if I could get to him or get to his conversations with law enforcement, I'll be able to tell you a little bit more.
Well, I have some of his statements, not to law enforcement, but to friends, a voice call, and then also some of his statements to the media that I want to get your opinion on. But first, you know, you kind of answered it right now. what is your opinion about the search, what we know about it? Are they even looking in the right place?
Well, what he's told them where he was, that's a question too. But again, if her body, and well, she's been gone now, what, 12 days, something a little bit longer than that.
She disappeared on the 4th, according to him, and reported missing on the 5th.
So she would have, if she was in the water, something would have appeared that they would have found by now. Something somewhere that, I mean, the United States Coast Guard is very thorough about searching the ocean. So something would have come up, or she would have, something would have appeared. I just don't believe that whatever happened did not happen in the water. And I think this was a scenario that was made up to cover him from whatever's going on. I mean, he's still under investigation by the Bahamian authorities, even though he got released under the law, but he's still being looked at. And I sent a strong message to the daughter and told her I would be more than happy to get involved, with my relationship, what I did in the Bahamas. I mean, I worked in a Bahamian case. I would work on this case as much as I did in Aruba for 18 years. It took me to learn Vandersloot was involved with the disappearance of Natalee Holloway. So these type cases take time and things have to be looked at. And it's a scenario that has to be done. And I've been there and done it. This is not the only case I've ever worked out of the country. So you're dealing with a whole different ball of wax when you're dealing with government that's not in the U.S. It's completely different. And so you've got to make sure you can sell yourself, that you have the credentials, and that they understand who you are and what you are, and you're not going to bother their investigation, that you're there to help them try to solve the matter. They've got to know that.
Yeah, and you definitely know what you're doing. Let me play his voicemail message or his phone call with his friend and get your take on that.
Okay.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow. She had the spare dinghy key in her dry bag, which was with her. The wind blew us apart so fast that I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat, back to our sailboat, which was probably, I don't know, 1,000 yards or something. But the waves were 3 foot, and I was yelling for her the whole time, and I yelled to her that I lost the oar, and I threw the anchor out and anchored the dinghy, and I yelled. I couldn't see her anymore. I threw her a flotation cushion that we used to sit on the dinghy, right after she went in. I couldn't tell if she got it or not. So after an hour of calling her, I never heard her voice. I'm never going to forgive myself. We stayed too long. We left too dark. All kinds of no life jackets. I had the two that you stuff, under the seats that nobody ever wears for, Coast Guard purposes. But we used to wear these life jackets. We had these other ones all the time. I can't explain what happened to us,
What sticks out to you as an investigator?
I think it's all, for me personally, I think that he's got this story. He's already made this story in his mind. He's going to stick with. And if he's talked to somebody else and there's change, I'll be able to see that if he starts talking about something else. But it's real interesting that the story is so made up for what transpired with him. So it'll be interesting to look at.
When we're talking about someone that loses a loved one when they're overseas, in this case, are you surprised that he has left the Bahamas?
Yes, I am. When Beth Holloway got involved with her daughter missing, she was there for over a year. She didn't leave that island. She was everywhere law enforcement was. There were people there. Tim Miller was there with EquiSearch. They brought his whole crew in. We brought people in. There were people living there that were searching, but Beth did not leave, and she was there a whole year. So I'm a little surprised that he's left, knowing that his wife is still missing. I mean, I know if it was my wife, I would still be there. I wouldn't be leaving. I would be looking and helping them search and trying to give them additional information to help locate her and find her, whatever it would take.
What does a search look like in a foreign country like the Bahamas? I mean, walk me through the steps. I mean, when you land there, what do you do and how is it different than searching in the United States?
Well, this is an outer island. This is Marsh Harbor. I've been to Marsh Harbor. And so it's a little bit different. You don't have the traffic and the people like you do when you're in other parts of the Bahamas. But the mere fact, all these people that are there now know that this lady's missing. There would be a crew of people. That's what he should have stayed and got people together
It's for you
to help him search and to look for his wife if it was that important. But he's now gone back and lawyered up on top of that. Okay, the lawyer is more important right now than it is his wife missing. I just read this morning when he got back to Michigan that he's also already hired lawyers there. So his concern now, it would be a project for they would have to go, if they do come up with some information that he's involved in some indirect, now the Bahamian authorities have to go through the United States in order to get him back there. I mean, it's a process. It's just not, they can't snatch him up and bring him back. They're going to have to go through the government to deal with him to get the proper authorities to get him back in the Bahamas.
Is that difficult? I mean, do you imagine that happening? It's still an open investigation, correct?
There's still a big investigation going on. And of course, the United States knows about it because the Coast Guard's involved. But they would have to go through a procedure in order, if they found new information that ties him to her going missing, they would have to go through the procedure to get him back from the U.S. back to the Bahamas. They'd have to go through the government to do that through the U.S.
And you know what? You've questioned and interrogated a whole lot of people over your career, not just as a private investigator, but as law enforcement. So, statements to you really stick out and consistency in statements. So now let me play you what he said to a couple of the news outlets. He did a few interviews after he was released. He was detained. No charges, right? So he does interviews with ABC, CBS, and NBC. And I put together a couple clips. And I'm going to get your opinion on it.
Okay.
I have no message to those who doubt me at all, ever. I'm going to keep doing what I need to do to find my wife. She belongs with me. We belong with each other. My sole focus is finding Lynette. My goal is to go back and speak with the Hopetown Fire and Rescue volunteers, the search and rescue volunteers. They have been, I believe, still looking whenever they can, but even while I have been detained by the Royal Bahamian Police Department. I was speaking with a volunteer the day that I was detained to go out on one of their boats. They were going to take off work and take me searching some more areas.
Oh, for God's sake.
I won't be able to stop looking.
You want to keep looking for Lynette?
I'm going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop.
Okay, so interesting language there in different parts. I'm going to need someone to tell me to stop. And then he says something to the nature of, we belong with each other, we belong to each other. He says that a couple times to two different reporters. So
I'm trying to reset my password to X, guys, and I've never used a 4-digit PIN, and it's asking for a 4-digit PIN, and I've tried what I think it is. So sorry I was absent, but I was trying to get into my X so I could sort of find out details if the Bahama police force are on X, or try and contact someone else, but I'll have to figure it out later. But what do you think of this guy? I think he is really, really credible. He must charge an extortionate amount to do what he does, but if he does what he says he does and gets answers quick, I wish he was on the Nancy Guthrie case. I really wish he was. But I guess, some of these PIs, if they're charging a lot of money per hour or per case, however they work out their charges, I guess it's all depends. He'll probably give a little bit of knowledge for free, like he's doing with Matt Johnson. He's given them little itsy bitsy bits, like I don't think she was disappeared from sea. And the way he described Brian, we all know that was fake tears, that Brian was doing on the interview. And then for Brian to say, I will never give up looking for my wife. It would take somebody, to tell me to stop. Do you need permission to stop looking for your loved one? And like he said, if I had a partner, went missing abroad, I would stay out there till we either found the body or we'd exhausted every single line. So, in my opinion, Brian knows he's guilty as fuck. He knows he's going to get caught out. He's trying to go. He went back to Michigan just to delay things because he knows for the Bahama Police Department to get in contact with him, they got to go through several loops. And it's not straightforward, like phoning him up and saying, here, Mr. Hooker, we need you back here. It's not that simple. They've got to go through different loops. They've got to get court orders and all sorts of things like that before they can actually demand him to come back or get someone in authority to physically bring him back. And I can't wait for the day that he is proven guilty, even though we have to assume everyone is innocent till they're proven guilty, till they're proven otherwise, everybody is innocent. But we can tell by all the holes in Brian's story, he is not being truthful. It's not just me, it's not just Ashley, it's not just these two guys on the screen here. It's everybody. And I looked through some messages on X, and there's a lot of people in the chat said that don't believe Brian either. So, come on, if he was innocent, people would be saying he's innocent, leave him alone. But, he's leaving so many clues. He's going to trip up. He really is going to trip up on himself.
So what stood out to you?
Let me tell you something. If he was that torn up about his wife gone missing, he wouldn't have left the Bahamas.
Exactly.
Okay,
Just
back
what
to
I
what we
said.
talked. He would still be there. He would still be looking. He would still be working with the Bahamian police or whoever. He would probably end up trying to get other people there to help him look for his wife. Why is he back in Michigan? What's he going to do there? Does he think there's some big team is out looking for her now? Has he been a part of that, of being in control if that could happen? This was completely different than when Natalee Holloway went missing. There were searches every hour of the day. Every night I was there, I was on the media wanting to tell them what happened, what I did that day. Okay, this is completely different. That's why I'm telling you, there's something more to this. And I will be able to tell you from the video you just showed me, the first video when he spoke to his friend, I think that's going to be critical because he was speaking to somebody he trusted, he knew, and he could talk openly. He had to be real careful what he was saying to the national media on national TV. And his scenario of speaking what he did with the media was completely different what he did when he spoke with his friend. Completely different. So I think there's going to be, and you may have just opened some Pandora's box for me to even more to get involved in this case when we put it out. And I think after I do the test, I think we need to get back and I'll tell you and show you the results, what the test is and where he's got problems.
Well, let's do that. Let's end our discussion right now. And I'm going to check back in with you after you run that. Okay, so TJ, it's been a day and you've taken the information, you've taken the statement that he made to his friend. And what did you find running it through your program?
Well, I can tell you that there's a lot of discrepancies about what he talked about, what happened with him, with his wife going overboard in the boat. My theory from my investigation has come up with 25 discrepancies.
I'll just hold that up there so that you can read it. So analyzing. So this is his layered voice program. This is like a bit like a ECG where it says like global stress, cognitive stress, emotional stress, thinking level, SOS value, risk stress, other ones. Then it's sort of like says that if it's a truth, and then key findings here, if it's in the red, multiple segments indicate probable false statements and high deception indicators. The amber is high stress and tension. The blue is concealment indicators, so inaccuracy and stress patterns suggested attempts at concealment. And then the green, truth. So on the SOS scale, this is what it's all like. So I think this is a really, really cool program. And it's a shame it's only a few people that can have this program. I don't even know if I can search it. Let's have a look while this is carrying on playing. So I'll have a look. I'll carry on playing this for
about what he's talked about and what he told his friend. He's not being exactly truthful about what he's talking about. And I think that's real important to the fact that he claims that she fell overboard, which I don't believe is the truth. And also, you saw a couple of times with the media that he spoke to that he was crying. His crying was not real. I can tell you that. I can see it in the test that I ran. This software is now got AI in it, and it's a very intelligent system created by the Israeli firm, and I have access to it for law enforcement and corporate security. When I was in law enforcement and internal affairs, I used this on investigators and law enforcement officers that were under investigation. And they were required by the policy and procedures of the investigative firm and the law enforcement agency to be able to sit down with me and me use the voice analysis to learn what transpired and things that they were involved in. So I can tell you that this is 95% accurate. And it's incredible what it'll do and what it'll show me and from a conversation. But his conversation with his friend and the media, there's a lot of discrepancies with his conversation.
What were some of the parts that stood out to you according to this program, this software, that showed untruthful in the program?
About her being in the water, about him being wanting her in his life and talking about how he had been with her for 25 plus years and that he wanted her back and wanted to be with her and she needed to be with him. Let me explain something to you. From my experience from working the disappearance of Natalee Holloway, Beth Holloway hired me originally in 2005 after I brought information to her with the voice analysis. She didn't leave that island for 1 year. This gentleman has gone back to Michigan knowing that his wife is missing. That just doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't he still be on the island and searching with individuals who are trying to find her? And but there's a lot of discrepancies from his conversation that I saw in this test that I performed, not only with his friend that he talked to, but what he talked about with the media also. So there's a lot of discrepancies that need to be looked into, and I would love to be able to turn this over to the family that's involved in this, and also to law enforcement in the Bahamas, because I think some of the things that they're going to see that I've learned from this interview and from what I can see from the layered voice analysis, that they're going to see where he's not being truthful about what he's talking about and what actually transpired.
How would you explain this software to a layperson and this program?
This software picks up on what is in your mind and what comes out of your mouth. Okay, so what you're thinking and what you're saying, it communicates by a program and be able to pick up what's being truthful coming out of your mouth and what's not being truthful or inaccurate. And I can see it. I can see the inaccuracies of what you're talking about. And if you're crying and it's not real, or if you're on drugs, I can see all that in the test. I can see all that in the test. And I mean, it's very important. This is a very sophisticated system that's been built by a firm in Israel. And they believe in me. I have the whole U.S. to sell and service this software, and I'm the only private investigator in the country licensed to use it.
Why do you believe in it so much?
because it works. It works. I mean, I can see, I've used it a lot. Law enforcement calls me when they have cases that they can't solve, and they'll have me come interview and sit down. And they solve cases from me giving them information from what I learned. So I mean, lots of law enforcement agents here in Georgia call me, and I use it. I go and utilize this and help them. I mean, I am 110% about law enforcement. I spent 47 years doing it, and I'm 110% with law enforcement. And if I can help the Bahamian law enforcement solve this case, I would be more than happy to. But, you know, I sent you information about it. I sent you the results of the test that I did, and you will see that there's 25 inconsistencies that he talked about in that short conversation. Okay. So I can guarantee you that law enforcement sat him down probably once or twice. And if I can take those interviews and analyze them, I will give them reports, and they will see things that they don't know about now.
And then what happens after they get those reports back? Because he's already in the United States, so he would need to be going back on his own free will to do more questions, or
I doubt if he'll go back. I doubt if he'll go back. They're going to have to probably use the United States, the government, to get him back here. You know, it doesn't make sense. A man who's been married 25 years to a woman, and she's missing, and he would leave the island that quickly. Why would you do that? Okay. If it was me and it was my wife, I'd still be there. I'd be there. I'd be down there with teams or whoever's trying to find her and try to locate her. Okay. Learning new information.
Anybody would do exactly the same. You know, even if I went abroad and my son went missing, I wouldn't come home until I had my son with me or he was being transported back in the body bag. You know, if it meant I had to stay out there 2 or 3 years, I would stay out there 2 or 3 years, you know, because you need to find your loved ones. And clearly, Brian didn't love Lynette enough to stay with her. And, you know, I'm going to start saying he's guilty. I know I can't, but it's my opinion. And it's freedom of speech at the end of the day. So if I want to say someone's guilty, then that's fine, because it's only my opinion. You know, I'm not accusing him directly to his face, but the more and more I hear about Brian Hooker, the more convinced I am that he is totally bloody guilty. You know, I'm really positive he's guilty. You know, I'd eat my jumper if it proved that he was totally innocent. And, you know, I'd have to cut it out, because if I swallowed it whole, I'd strangle myself inside. But yeah, so, you know, I am positive Brian Hooker is guilty. And that is why he shot off to Michigan as fast as his little legs. Well, they're not little, they're quite long legs, but as quick as his legs could carry him, you know. And how he managed to get an emergency passport in that short length of time is amazing. Unless you don't need a passport to go out from the Bahamas to Michigan. I don't know. I have heard some countries don't require passports. But yeah, we will see.
What else can you share about the report that sticks out? What answers or explanations was he given? Give me concrete examples in the report of what you're saying is not truthful and what is truthful.
Well, one of the things that I believe, and probably half the people that know about this case, she's not in the water. I can tell you that. She wasn't put in the water. I think this scenario was made up to use the water and the boat as a scenario for whatever he did. And I'm not accusing him of doing anything at this point in time, but from my understanding of what I saw from this test, I don't believe she's in the water.
Exactly same as I think.
When the authorities are able to get your report, if they're able to see an analysis of his interviews from behind closed doors, what's the next step for them?
There may be something that he talked about that they're not real sure about. But if I do the exam of their interview, I may see something and show them what he talked about may not be consistent or be true. Okay, so they may want to go back and ask additional questions, whether it's him here or him not coming here. But I think I think he left to get out of the U.S.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, get back in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he knew there's different things going to come up. He's got no idea about me yet.
Yeah.
So does this program...
Unless Brian Hooker is watching this this show, then he will know about you. And then he will really be shaking in his boots. I hope he's not sleeping. If he is guilty, how anybody can sleep after they've done away with their partner after 25 years of marriage. That is just unbelievable. And I hope nearer the time when we find out if Brian is guilty, I hope I can come back to reference my own video of showing TJ saying that he, in his opinion, he's guilty. In his opinion, Lynette did not disappear at sea. She's probably on land, there's so many little niches that are, niggling away. And every time you hear something, you think, yeah, that's ticked that box. That's confirmed what I've been thinking, So he's going to get caught. And as I say, hook, line, and bloody sinker. And I hope they throw away the bloody keys on him.
Work in a way almost like a lie detector test?
It does, but I can see other things. And again, lie detector, you got to be wired up and blood pressure on this. I don't even need you in front of me. I can do it by phone. I can do it by recording, and I can do it live in any language. And I can tell you what's going on with you. I can see what's in your mind, what you're talking about. I mean, it's incredible. This was developed by a firm in Israel. They are way ahead of us in technology.
Does it put pressure?
It's unusual for Israel to be ahead of technology, because I've always known it to be like China, Japan, and them two areas that are sort of like right up with the new ideas and new inventions. But I never heard, or I've never given it a thought, how well Israel is doing for technology. And Trump wants to kill them all. Stupid.
Pressure on people? Is that, in your experience, how it works? How would it help in this case?
Well, I think if law enforcement can see what his conversation was and what the results were from my test, and if I could take they interviewed him, of course. If I could take their actual interview and sit down with them and show them and analyze their interview, they're going to see where he's not being truthful.
So then what does that do? Does that bring him back for more questioning and then lead to more answers?
Well, they may learn something from it. He's still under investigation, but I think it would bring them back to ask additional questions about what has transpired. And he went in detail talking to his friend. I mean, it was great to have that interview. That was a perfect interview. It came out perfectly. And I mean, I had that interview that I would share with law enforcement, but I believe it would be their benefit being able to take a interview that this person, Brian Hooker, had no idea he was talking to somebody he trusted, a friend of his. And he talked about what he thought transpired. And I can see that there's a lot of discrepancies in his conversation, what he told his friend. I can see it, and I will share it with law enforcement. And this will be a big difference. And being able to keep this case active and in the media, we'll find other witnesses that know about what transpired in the Bahamas. Guarantee you. That's what happened in Aruba.
And hopefully get answers and bring Lynette home. That's what we're all about, right? Like bring Lynette home and get answers for the family. You know what? TJ Ward, private investigator, 47 years law enforcement experience. You worked on the Natalee Holloway case. You're still working on it right now, the disappearance of that case. And this is the technology that got you involved in that case, that helped crack that case open, many would argue, and lead to the arrest and lead to the answers that we have so far. I really appreciate your time. We're going to share this episode with the daughter, and hopefully we'll get some new answers there. Thank you for your time.
That's the whole thing. We want to find this lady. We want to find what happened to her. That's the bottom line. And we want to keep this active. We want to keep it out in the media because there's somebody out there that probably knows something else that they don't know about yet.
Exactly.
TJ Ward, thank you for your time. And hopefully we have a good update soon in this case that breaks it open. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Yeah. So what do you think of TJ Ward? I am amused and amazed at him. And 47 years in the police force. Wow. Or in the industry he's in. That is a long time. He certainly must have, been really good at what he does. And from what he says, he is really good.
Anyone with any information in this case, please call the Bahamian authorities or the FBI. You can remain anonymous. In the meantime, let's keep Lynette's family in our thoughts and prayers. I have the GoFundMe for her daughter. She wants to return to the Bahamas to search for her mom in my show notes. So please share this episode. In the meantime, take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.
Right. I'll just go and get his link to the GoFundMe because I think when I looked this morning, where am I? I need to adjust the screen. Bear with. Where's the screen size? There it is. It's hiding. Let's bring it up here. So if you want the link, just search for Lynette Hooker missing in Bahamas. Let me just come on to my streamline and share this. Just check that you can see it. So that's the GoFundMe page. It has changed. Oh, she's on $13,000 out of $18K raised. Picture of her and her mum. And it says, in memorial for my mum, she has been missing in the Bahamas since the 4th of April. This is to help to search for her or to help to lay her to rest. Anything would help. My email is my first and last name @gmail. If you know anything, please let me know. And then updates on the 18th of April, Kylie put, we are heading back from the Bahamas right now. Thank you all for the support. It's helped me to get some answers on what's happened. I retraced their steps from that day and it just makes the story sound more sketchy to me. I would like to head back down again soon if I can, to not only to remember my last times with her, but to also to get at the bottom of what has happened. And she shares, some photographs when she was out there talking to various people. That's her and her boyfriend. Lovely picture. And someone gave her some tokens. So that's a really cute idea. That's nice, that is. And then back to there. So yeah, so if you can donate, please do. I did donate the other day, but I did it as anonymous only because I didn't want people seeing my name. Even though my full name's not difficult to find, but I don't need to let everybody see me in black and white, what I donated and when I donated it, So I always like to remain anonymous on that, because if I did a low donation, people might say, oh, she only did this. Oh, I'm sure she could have done more. But I'm not being paid from YouTube to do my videos. This is, my sideline, and I'm hoping to get better at storytelling. So this is all learning for me. And yes, I've had some criticism saying my channel, on one of my episodes, I don't know which one it is, but I know a couple of them is shocking. And because I watched it back and I thought, oh my God. And I put my head in my hands. And I felt like deleting all the bad ones, but I want to keep the bad videos up there so that I've got something to reference back. And, it's been nice when people have messaged me saying, great video, love the way you do your way of telling the story. And, that does help you even though I know my dyslexia gets in the way of me at times, and I see a word on the page in front of me and I know what that word says, but what comes out of my mouth is something totally different. I have no control over my dyslexia. So that's another reason why I thought, with all my health conditions and things, I need to keep busy. I need to stay focused, because otherwise I will just rot away in the chair. So I thought, let's try doing YouTube. I'm not going to give up after, a small defeat. I'm going to keep on going until, I can make it or break it, basically. And I've had a couple people message me saying your interview was shocking. Yes, I agree. I'm not as advanced and experienced as some people. And some people out there are so brilliant at storytelling. I can't pretend to be somebody I'm not. So, there are little ways I can improve. And I will eventually, get round to improving. But it has to come naturally. But at the end of the day, all my stories still come from the bottom of my heart. I'm trying my best out there. Some people might even think, oh God, I'm not going to post that one because it's terrible. And they delete it. So no one gets to see it. But I want people to see who I am for what I am. And I take on all the bad criticism, because at the end of the day, that's only going to make me better. So, I thank people that criticize me and have a whinge at me via email and that. So, it's all part of the course. And, if you don't get bad criticism, you don't know how to improve. So those people that criticize you are actually doing you a big favor. So I just thought I'd get on my little soapbox and say about that. I do have dyslexia. I'm not going to make an excuse for it. It is a part of who I am. And, if members don't want to be a member of my channel because of the way I don't tell stories the way other creators do, then, that my channel's not for them. But luckily, I'm glad I've got some kind viewers that will put up with me. And we'll hopefully, over the few months, we'll see a much better improved me. You can't improve overnight. It takes time. And, the best comes to those who wait. So I guess those people that are not signing up to my site now may miss out, But I am trying my best, guys. It is embarrassing when I look back on a couple of my videos and I literally hold my head in shame. And I think, oh my God, did I really put that out in public? But it's there. I don't care. I know that I've got a lot to improve on. So, and hopefully one day I will get there. It's a slow journey. Rome wasn't built in a day, and nor was the China Wall, Great Wall of China. That wasn't built in a day. But anyway, please like and subscribe to me if you fancy. You're not subscribing to me or liking me because you like me. You're liking the story and the message behind and in the story. And you're liking it and sharing it for Lynette and Kaylee and her grandmother. Oh, I can't remember her mum's name. No, I don't know. It's just gone out my head. Darlene, is it? Darlene? Might be Darlene. But yeah, so you're doing all that to help this girl. She needs her mum back. Everybody needs their mum, one way or another, if she's alive or if she's not. Same as Savannah Guthrie and Nancy. Savannah and Annie still need their mum to come back. See what I mean? We all need our mums. My mum was taken away too soon from me, and I wish I could have my mum back. I really, really do. So I'm signing off now because, believe it or not, this 2-part video has taken me since like 12 o'clock today, and it's 5:30. So I've done probably 2 hours of recording. I did have 45 minutes break in between, but it's the research into it, and there is a lot of work that goes into researching a case. So anyway, getting off my soapbox, I'm ending this here now. So I appreciate it if you stayed with me right from the start to the end. you know, I do appreciate that. And, you know, I'm forever thank you for you guys that stayed to the end, or you done like me, took a break halfway through, because I can't sit here for 2 hours and, you know, my muscles would just seize up on me. But till the next one, guys, have a safe weekend and I'll see you on the next show, hopefully. Take care now.